Come join hand in hand, brave Americans all, and rouse your bold hearts at their liberty's call. No tyrannous act shall suppress your just claim, or stain with dishonor America's name. What truly makes a man a man? And if given the chance to truly climb into the heart of a man, how could you ever be for certain that what lies inside is true? This is the Karl Pilkington documentary. Where a lot of documentaries nowadays miss the mark is that they fail to psychologically evaluate their person of interest. Documentaries on people, they always fail to really thoroughly examine a person's motivations, a person's beginnings, a person's appearance. They just don't understand how to get to the fundamental root of a person. Well, luckily for all of you, I am a man that is well versed in psychology. I've taken many classes on psychology. I've studied physiognomy all my life. So we're not going to make the same mistake. This is a documentary about Karl Pilkington, and the first thing that we are going to do is examine the physiognomy of Karl Pilkington. We're going to be looking at his face and learning a lot about him. There's a reason why blind people, many times when they first meet a person, they'll put the hand across the face to truly learn what you're all about. I've learned a lot about my fellow man that way. So without further ado, let's get into the first part of the documentary, examining the facial features of Karl Pilkington. So do not be alarmed here, fans, because I'm about to go off the screen. You're about to see some pictures from the internet of Karl Pilkington, as well as a picture I have drawn. All right, so let's look here. Karl Pilkington, certainly a handsome enough fellow. Let's look at some of the things I've written here. So we see up top here, a wrinkled forehead. Has a wrinkled forehead. Wrinkled forehead can be either a symbol of stress or conscientiousness. With Karl, we can safely say it's conscientiousness. Some people, they get wrinkled foreheads. Think about villains and criminals and such. They get wrinkled foreheads from evil plotting and the stress that comes with running from the police their entire lives. But not Karl. Karl is a guy that has lived a pretty good life, you could say. He has wrinkled forehead because he's not thinking about the next crime he's going to commit. He's locked up in his room thinking about, how can I get that homeless person a McDonald's cheeseburger? Now we look at the next part of his physiognomy. Eyebrows slanting upward indicate innocence and honest intent. Now, almost every picture you find of Karl, you see his eyebrows, and his eyebrows practically always slant upwards. Much the same as mine do, to some extent, because I'm an honest man, and so is Karl Pilkington. He's an honest guy. He says what's on his mind. Sure, sometimes what he says can be a little bit wacky, people would say. But the guy's an honest guy that thinks in an aberrant way in many ways. He thinks in a way that many people would be scared to think. He has original thoughts, and he's not afraid to say them. A lot of people, they're afraid to say anything. They're afraid to do any, even on like the internet, they're afraid to do any hashtag that isn't what everybody else is thinking and doing. So Karl, we here on my channel, we say you're a good guy, and hats off to you for being that way. Now, we look at another feature here. Let's take a look. Wide open eyes. Another indicator of innocence and honesty. You always hear about people like Bambi, even the deer from that movie, being wide-eyed, meaning they are innocent. Now let's look at another feature here. Lips. His lips. And you can find pictures of his lips in many different other things on the internet. You can see a lot of pictures of his lips. But obviously his lips here, right here in this particular picture, and in many other pictures, it's the same way. They sit in a transitory phase between talking and silence, indicating he could speak at any time, but that he means no harm with his words. You can see he looks very innocent, and in that picture, and you'll see it, I put it up, the picture that I drew this from, I put it up on the thing, but his lip is kind of shaded in that picture, so it's hard to tell if maybe his mouth is a little bit open in that picture, but it shows that the guy, you know, he's not pursing his lips in some arrogant manner. He's not sitting with his mouth agape as if he's saying that you're stupid or anything like that. He's just an innocent guy that's not afraid to say what's on his mind. You can tell that he has a very innocent look of good intent, and he just wants to say what's on his mind. And it's a shame that he's been exploited the way he has in many of the things you see on the television. Let's look at another thing here. Karl's ears. They sort of wave outward. This shows he is a good listener. But they also indicate that he can either say hello, aka absorb your information, or say goodbye to your information, and in parentheses, reject. So yes, that indicates he can either absorb your information very easily, because yes, he's a good listener, but he can also choose to wave goodbye and reject that information. So if you tell him something like, you know, murder should be legal or whatever, which is a talking point of some people nowadays politically, you tell him something like that, he's not going to take that in. He's not going to listen to you. He's going to reject that information. And now we have a final feature here. And of course, there's a lot more, but I didn't want to make this, 2 hours on his physiognomy like I could have. There's a lot more to it. But this is the final thing that I've written here. His nose. His nose is a combination of the scooped up celestial type. Google that. Celestial. And the Owen Wilson crooked archetype. And this all shows that Karl is a sentimental person that thinks outside the box. The scooped up celestial type nose, it shows that you are you can empathize with people. Like if you see somebody fall down and hurt their knee, maybe you remember a time that you scraped your knee and you go over there and you dive down and you give them a big hug and you say, buddy, your knee's gonna heal up. And the Owen Wilson, of course, he's a pretty good actor, pretty good guy by all accounts. And the crooked nose that he has, it's not just unique to Owen Wilson. It actually is a nose archetype, and it shows that he can think outside the box. So in summary of the physiognomy part of the video, Karl's face indicates that he is incredibly honest and innocent. Now, Karl, I call on you as sort of a service to the world. And listen, I know you've already done a lot for the world, but I think this would be a great thing. Blind people, they lead pretty hard lives, okay? Hear me out. Without sight, you have to admit, if you were to lose your sight, your life would probably go down in quality somewhat. Now, one of the only things, well, I shouldn't say one of the only things, but one thing that makes blind people feel joy is when they get to feel the face of a person that is truly good. I've seen a blind person vomit after feeling the face of an evil dictator. So what I call on you to do, Karl, is to let blind people the world over come and feel your honest, innocent face so we can see them smile. Thank you. Now, to give you a little context to the introduction song of the video, I don't harbor any ill will toward the British. Not at all. Even though my great grandfather was treated probably as badly as Johnny Depp was treated by those British lords in the Pirates of the Caribbean. But listen, I harbor no ill will toward the British. But there are clear differences in American comedy and British comedy. So that introduction song sort of served to show a distinction there. And it was also a sort of tough posturing on my part, because I know that Karl Pilkington's a big thing in British culture. Not to say he's not a big thing in American culture too, but he's certainly a very huge superstar in British culture. So I don't want people that may take umbrage to this video to attack me. So I began with that song to sort of show any miscreants that may be planning on attacking me for this video that I'm a pretty tough guy. That's why I sung that song at the start. Okay, everyone, now we look a little bit at the life of Karl Pilkington, his progression through life, his career, his early life. Karl Pilkington was born in the UK in 1972. This would mean in 1980, he was 8 years old. The inflation rate in the UK in 1980, 21.8%. I wonder what type of effect that had on the young man. Likely a major one. He was the head of production for a major British radio station, XFM, before he was even 30 years old. Wow. That shows the extent of Karl Pilkington's talent. Now we're going to look at Ricky Gervais entering into the picture, and this will help ride us into the final section of the documentary. Ricky Gervais meets with Karl Pilkington, and they form somewhat of a bond, and Ricky Gervais often takes to playing practical jokes on Karl. Wonder how that made him feel. Ricky Gervais, he did a big movie you probably saw called The Invention of Lying, and you may have even seen a cameo by Mr. Karl Pilkington in that movie. Oh wait, no, you wouldn't have seen that cameo. You know why? It was cut before final release. Wonder what that does to a man, having a cameo in a major motion picture, waiting to see yourself on the big screen in a major motion picture, just to have it cut before it even is released. Wonder what that did to Karl's psyche. He was in a show, Karl Pilkington, that he likely had little to no input in naming. They called it An Idiot Abroad. You gotta wonder what all that does, the confluence of all that. What did that do to Karl Pilkington? He has his own TV show, but whenever he goes to meet somebody for his new TV show and they wonder who this guy is, who's the star of this show. Oh, that's right, he's the idiot. He's the idiot abroad. And idiot's such a nasty word. Such a nasty word to call somebody. Now, we look at one of his quotes. Karl Pilkington, he's known as a very quotable guy. That's why a lot of people get a lot of laughs from his quotes. He has one quote in particular where he says, "Slugs are always on their own. They're lonely insects." And slugs are not. They're not insects. So that's why a lot of people get a good guffaw from that quote. Another trademark of Karl Pilkington, when you look at his biography, I have it written down here, he rarely smiles. I wonder why that is. Now, Karl Pilkington, he announced that he may be retiring in 2016. He's tired of all the fame, tired of all the pictures. And we see, even in his retirement, with Ricky Gervais wishing him the best, he couldn't help but taking a dig at Mr. Pilkington, saying that he wished him the best and calling him a part chimp. All right, folks, stay tuned for the final segment of the documentary. There's a dark side to Karl's superstardom. Karl's superstardom comes with a price tag bigger than most people can even fathom. Now we get to a more somber part of the video. Karl, I've seen you in various interviews, various television shows, where there's a man named Ricky Gervais, who is an accomplished actor and comedian. Sure, he did some bad things at the Golden Globes. He said some bad stuff, but I guess that's sort of his brand of comedy, to outrage everybody, to say things that crossed the line so much that it made myself and many other movie lovers, made us want to drop down and cry. Ricky's a pretty tough guy. And Karl, I know you think he's your friend, and he may be your friend in some aspects. He may really be a friend of yours. But from what I've seen in the videos and the interviews, the guy's often laughing at you. He laughs at you, not with you. Not with you, Karl. I've seen him laughing at you. I've watched hours upon hours of this guy laughing at you like you're the biggest joke in the world. And yes, Karl, you say some stuff that's outlandish, that's funny in its own right, that a lot of people laugh at. And I know that you see it yourself, and you probably think, at least to some extent, these people are laughing with you. These people are on your side. But I know for a fact, a big faction of these people are laughing right at you, Karl. And they wouldn't care if you went without supper one day. They wouldn't give a darn. They just want you to get on screen and say something foolish. Say something they can have a big laugh at, that they can share around with their friends, that they can make clips on YouTube saying funniest moments of Karl Pilkington, and you'll be walking around with a befuddled look on your face, and you'll say something, or you'll get involved in some event that just downright embarrasses you. And these people, they'll be doubled over laughing. And Ricky Gervais, he's sitting in his living room probably replaying it on the television screen, having himself the biggest laugh of his life. So Karl, in closing, I ask you to reevaluate your relationship with Ricky Gervais. I ask you to reevaluate your time on the television, your time as an actor, voice actor, and all the other things that you do. Because you are a good man, Karl, and I hate to see you being abused the way you're being abused. There's few things in this world worse than being laughed at. I've known a lot of men that had done great things, that had had good accomplishments under their belt, that lived respectable lives. They do one thing embarrassing in public. It gets videoed. Memes are made. It gets played back about them for the rest of their lives. And at first, they try to roll with the punches. But eventually, they realize that meme, that embarrassment's gonna follow them forever. And they either become caricatures of themselves, or they become the punching bag of people that love nothing more than to laugh and laugh and laugh again at another man's expense. So Karl, you've got a choice here. Stand up to all of them and become a scholar, become what we all know you can be, or continue to take the punches and the punches and the punches until your body and your mind are bruised and left in tatters, and we can't even recognize the sense of childlike wonder you once harbored.